So the oral stage. So this stage, like I said, it begins at approximately birth and begins at birth and lasts approximately up to 1.5 years of age. Now, at this particular time, the mouth or the oral cavity, as Freud liked to call it, he didn't really like to call it the mouth. He liked to call it the oral cavity. Is the fixation? The obsession is with this particular erogenous zone, and it becomes the primary focus of libidinal energy. Why? Because the child is preoccupying himself with activities related to the oral cavity, which is nursing, sucking, accepting things into the mouth. If you've had babies or if you have babies in your family, you can observe their behavior that everything goes into a baby's mouth. Like you give a toy, you give a finger, you give a cloth, everything goes into the baby's mouth. And Freud observed this in babies and felt that there was a reason for it. And the reason was that the child had an indefinite need to nurse and to breastfeed, and the satisfaction of all of life at that moment for a child comes through the mouth. So the child doesn't have a need for money or cars or houses or holidays or things like that. The primary and only need that an infant has is to be breastfed and to be satisfied, to satisfy the need of hunger. So this is where all his energy is focused, and hence the mouth becomes, or the oral cavity becomes, his area of focus. Now, the person who is frustrated, now, if you remember frustration is not being met, needs not being met. So mother is not breastfeeding or nursing on demand when the child needs it, can lead to frustration. These people generally tend to show character traits of pessimism, envy, suspicion, sarcasm. If you see these traits, they have one thing in common. These are all basically a lack of trust. Uh, Pessimism is the first sort of a symptom of a lack of trust, and so is suspicion. So these people are always very suspicious of those around them. They're very negative about the outcome of life. They can be very acidic and sarcastic, and they envy other people, but they don't really want to show it. This kind of basic lack of trust is coming from a lack of trust in the mother and a lack of trust in the fact that you will be fed when you need to. Now, on the other hand, you also have the possibility that the mother gives in to every demand to breastfeed and is overindulging the child. In this case, the child may show traits such as too much optimism. Now, when you're looking at optimism here, don't see it as something which is positive, like optimism, like, oh, you're optimistic. It's optimism which is toxic. So, those people who are always happy, always, cheerful, always, and it gets to the point where they can be quite irritating. They are not real about the fact that there is a negative part to life. Those people are the ones who are basically maybe some form of denial. They just don't see the world for what it is. They can be gullible. Again, gullibility is that, not seeing the world for what it is, and an over admiration for people around them. Obviously, the conflict here is between the id and the superego, for the primary reason that the id is saying, yeah, since at the moment of birth you are only born with the id, you don't yet have a superego, but the ego and superego starts as a result of the psychosexual stages of development. They start to develop. So during this process, you are developing an ego and a superego, and the conflict is around weaning, which deprives the child the pleasure of nursing and being cared for the mother. It is saying, I want more of this. The ego, the developing ego and superego are saying, but no, you can't be stuck to your mother's breast because it's inappropriate. Later on, psychologists also posited or pointed out that fixations in this stage could possibly be the reason for addictions, as addictions are seen as a frustration with the oral stage and a need to satisfy the oral cavity. What they basically felt was that maybe a lack of frustration or a lack of feeding behavior could have led to this addiction to satisfy the oral cavity or to keep something in the mouth, and hence you always have the cigarette or the glass of alcohol or drugs around your oral cavity, consumption through your mouth basically. Then